morning, everyone. I'm Lisa Raimondo, Albany County DPW Commissioner. On behalf of County Executive Dan McCoy, I'd like to welcome you to our public meeting for our new Karner Road Corridor Improvements Project. Clough Harbor is our design engineer for this federally aided project. At this time, I'd like to turn it over to Joe Cimino and Brian Healy from Clough Harbor. They're going to give a presentation of the improvements that are being proposed for our project, and we're going to be available to answer questions after the presentation. Thank you.
So I'm going to present from here. We're going to use the clicker and the PowerPoint here. Lisa mentioned the team from Albany County. Lisa and Brett Meredith is also here from Albany County. CHA Consulting, Clough Harbor Associates. We are represented by 4 folks here. Myself, as the project manager of the project. Brian Healy is here as well. Brian is our senior project engineer on the project. Jeff Gensler in the back at this table is our lead project engineer, and we have help from another one of our friends at CHA, our co-worker Lucia Lynn, who signed you in and gave you some information. So that's our team. So tonight's agenda, we've already started really what we plan to do tonight, and that is have a early open house. We did that for a half hour for folks to ask some preliminary questions and so forth. We think you may have more once you hear our presentation, or in fact, we hope we answer all your questions during our presentation. But certainly if you do have more, we'll answer some of those in this setting. And then after this setting, we'll go back to the open house and stay here until 7:30. We have a out the door at 7:30 per our agreement. So until then, though, if you have questions, we can certainly talk to you at the boards. We do have written comments that can be made. Lucia at the front of the room has comment forms. That is one way to be able to provide comments for this project. And please keep them to this project or the adjacent area around the project. Because I'm sure there are other things in the city, town, village that you would like to comment on, but keep it to the new Karner Road corridor. We have a website here. At the end of the presentation, we're going to leave this screen up. So you will see that website if you want to write it down now. I'm sorry, not website, email address. B. Healy at CHA Solutions. That's Brian here. He drew the short straw. He's going to get all the comments. They are due by February 16th, a couple weeks out. And we will, do you want nothing more? All right, so our presentation tonight, agenda. I'm going to talk about the first 4 bullets, the location and limits of the project, which many of you are aware of. Make sure those are well defined. The objectives of the project, what are we trying to accomplish within the funding constraints that we have? The federal aid project development process, we're just going to touch on that briefly. And the reason to do that is to inform you of what we have to do to get federal reimbursement dollars. There is a process. We'd like to just touch on that so that there's an understanding of the time frame that these sort of large investments take and what some of the steps are along the way. I'm going to then tell you where we are within that federal aid development process today and where we're going in the future in general terms. And then Brian's going to talk to the project components, we call it. That'll be the specific design improvements that we are proposing as of today, and we want your input. Then, as I mentioned, we will return to an open house setting after some questions, if you have any, in this more formal setting. I will ask, and it works best this way, if you have questions after I'm done, and Brian's done, that are general in nature, that are questions that most in the room would want to hear the answer to, let's ask it in this forum, because then everybody can hear the answer. If you have very specific questions about a property or your property, et cetera, something that the majority would not necessarily be interested in, we can talk to those at the board on an individual basis. We will have one person, me, Brian, and Jeff at the boards. Brian will be way over there, I will be here. Jeff will be at the middle board. So the way the boards are, I just want to bring this up, and you may have already discovered this. We started from south, from the south to the north. So as this map shows, from left to right, there's our north arrow, south to north. That's the way the boards start, all the way over on the left side. That first board takes you to about the I-90 bridges, railroad bridges. The second board takes you from I-90 north to Waterville Shaker Road. So this project is about 4 miles. It goes from Western Avenue in Guilderland, by Corporate Circle, Washington Avenue Extension, obviously a major intersection in the corridor, over I-90, past Old State Road and Albany Street, through Central Avenue, ending in Colony at Waterville Shaker Road. I want to stress that this project at its core is a mill pave resurface project. That is why the project started and why it was started, and really what the most important thing that we can accomplish with these federal aid dollars. Because it's probably not a surprise to you if you drove here, there is work that the road needs, and potholes, deteriorations, particularly at a lot of the pavement joints, is evident. Brian will speak to those in more detail. So as we describe the project, know that that's the main goal. We have been able to propose other improvements as funding allows to enhance the project, to provide some things beyond the pavement improvements. Those are listed here as 3, 4, 5, and 6. There are a few areas where we'd like to propose to widen some of the narrower shoulders. So that's one additional benefit we may gain from this project. There are 2 areas where we feel we can use dollars wisely to lengthen some of the current sidewalks or add new sidewalks. But it's certainly not the case where we're going to put sidewalks along this whole stretch of roadway. There is a plan that the county has commissioned that is in the works to look at a multi-use path, other types of pedestrian and bicycle accommodations that are much bigger than this project. That is in the works, but it is not part of this project. When I say that it is in the works, the planning and the potential funding of that are being reviewed by the county. It is not something that's going to happen tomorrow, and it's not going to be part of this project. We also want to evaluate and have evaluated the culverts that cross the roadway underneath, carry water, clean those out and or rehabilitate those so that the roadway structure above it stays down, and we hopefully eliminate flooding that may or may not have occurred as our storms increase and so forth. So that, when I say culverts, I'm talking about larger culverts. I'm not talking about little 24, 12-inch pipes. We're talking some that are 3, 4 feet or less, but we're evaluating those, replacing or rehabbing, mostly rehabbing those. The last thing is a big one. It is a big one, and it's a potential for a roundabout at New Karner Road and Washington Avenue Extension. We will talk about that in more detail when Brian talks. And you may say, well, Joe, you just said that this is a mill and pave job. How can we then add a large element, a roundabout, at a major intersection? Well, our partners at New York State DOT, who own that roadway, when I say that roadway, I mean Washington Avenue Extension, when they're aware of the fact that we're improving New Karner Road, and we did some initial traffic studies and capacity studies for that intersection, we found, again, probably not surprising, that there is operational issues from a traffic perspective at that issue that Brian will speak in more detail. So if and when this is added, but it is the current plan to be added, that is going to be funded by New York State and not the New Karner dollars that I spoke about. The federal aid development process, I'll go through quickly, but this is a locally administered federal aid project, and that means the county is the lead. They provide the funds in the first instance, but then get reimbursed for 80% of the funds from the federal government. So the county is what we call the sponsor who's running the project with CHA's help, DOT and FHWA, due to the funding that they provide, do have oversight. And that's important because there are certain steps that need to happen, which I will speak to in a minute, for the county to ensure the funding that they will receive. 4 phases of the process. We always break it up into scoping, preliminary engineering, detailed design, and construction. We are in preliminary engineering phase right now. Scoping that has been completed is the background stuff. We get survey and mapping of the roadway. We start environmental screenings. We do those traffic and operational analyses that I spoke about at all the major intersections along the roadway. We didn't just do it at Karner and Washington Avenue Extension. We did it at all the major roadways to look what other operational benefits we can gain at those intersections. And then we developed a range of alternatives, which you see on the boards. We're in preliminary engineering, and we have completed so far the concepts levels that you see, including the board in the middle, which is the roundabout concept. And we are developing a draft design approval document, which is basically a report that goes to the state, the feds, the county, everybody reads it, agrees to what we are going to build and the funding that's required. That's a milestone that's reached so that all parties can say we are in agreement and this is how we're going forward. We all need to agree before we get into detailed design where we detail this project out. Part of this process, phase 2, is public involvement. So this meeting tonight is the first of our public meetings where we want to hear from you either via comment boards or after the meeting for what you think about what we're proposing. And if there's any additional information that you have about particular sites that we may or may not be aware of, we want to hear about it. Whether that be a drainage issue, a safety issue that you feel it needs to be addressed, and so forth. Where we're going in this second phase in the future is, again, February 16th, we'll have all your comments, and we'll summarize those internally. They will be part of that design approval document I spoke about earlier. We'll continue our environmental screenings and coordination, and towards the end of this phase, we will finalize what is our preferred alternative and get what's called design approval, and that's that design agreement between all the parties that we'll move forward with. Phase 3 will be more detailing of the design itself, and that's construction plan development that we will design at CHA. A big part of phase 3 is obtaining environmental permits, and I don't want to understate that there are some challenges, and I say challenges, but can be overcome for sure, but there are some challenges in the area because this is a very sensitive area. Karner blue butterfly, the preserve that's there, and so forth. We will be working with DEC, the New York State DOT and their environmental folks, and the Army Corps of Engineers to permit this project. So that's a big part of this process to get federal aid. Also, there's some right-of-way acquisitions, parcels of land, mostly strip acquisitions that need to be acquired, and that's started in phase 2, but really completed in phase 3. And that is what we'll be honing in on as we do more preliminary studies. But right now, as we sit here today, we see about 4 properties that we would need to acquire some land from. At the end of phase 3 is advertising the project for construction for contractors to bid, and then phase 4 is construction. So those phases are broken up into 1, 2, 3, 4 with tentative dates. These things have a way of floating sometimes, sometimes shorter, sometimes longer. Best we can tell you at this point, though, because of all those variables, the right-of-way acquisitions, the environmental meetings that we have to have, the permitting we have to do, our plan right now from present to the fall of this year is to complete phase 2, the preliminary engineering and the environmental coordination. The end of this year into early next year, do the detailed design, which again, in a lot of times is the shortest phase of all of them because we control that, we design it, we know what we got to design and we design it. Some of these other phases become a little more dependent on other agencies that we can coordinate with as efficiently as possible, but they have schedules that they have to meet for all the projects we do, so that can float. But at this point, we would then plan to construct in 2025 and start that year, have a winter shutdown, and go into the majority of the construction in 2026. The road will be kept open throughout construction. There will be short-term closures of lanes during work, except for maybe the roundabout, or we don't know yet.
It's the roundabout stage.
Stage, you'll talk about that. Speaking of you, Brian's going to talk about the specifics of the improvements.
All right. Thanks, Joe. So as Joe mentioned, the main purpose of this project is to rehabilitate the pavement. The existing pavement out there is actually 3 inches of asphalt over 9 inches of a concrete pavement. Unfortunately, when you have concrete pavement with an asphalt overlay, it's very susceptible to cracking because the concrete underneath is moving, and when it cracks, you get water under that asphalt layer, and then it starts through freeze thaw, starts coming up, and we start developing potholes. So as you can see, there's a couple of examples. There's a lot of cracking on the shoulders, and we're starting to develop some potholes on the edge lines right now. And the concern is if we go much longer, the road's going to really start falling apart. So what we're proposing to do is we're going to mill off all the existing asphalt that's out there and take it right back down to the concrete. At that point, we're going to do a 2-course overlay, which would be 4.5 inches, a little thicker than what's out there today. We're going to utilize some new technology that's out there with like a reinforcement layer in between the asphalt that will really help stiffen the asphalt up, hopefully stop a lot of cracking happening in the future, and really prolong the longevity of the pavement in the future. One of the other issues, unfortunately, is when we raise the pavement, all the guide rail is probably going to have to be raised at the same time. So, and there's a few intersections out there that don't meet current standards, so we're going to bring those all up to current standards as part of the project. The other big component of this, if you probably really hard to see, but in this picture here, like I said, this is concrete pavement. It's panels underneath the asphalt. Every 61 feet, there's a joint, and every one of those joints is coming right through the concrete. And especially right now, if you drive up and down, you can feel those bumps. It's heaving. It's so we're really trying to eliminate that. And one of the things that we're going to look at to really help is put in some relief joints. And what that is we're going to basically take out parts of the concrete, put in asphalt, and provide an area for that concrete to kind of move, so we don't get those cracking coming right up through the asphalt and having the same issue in another 10 years where we get all the heaves coming up. So that's one of the other big components. I know there's a lot of complaints about the heaves, particularly I know some of the neighbors that hear the noises as cars are going by, and all I hear is so they're trying to eliminate all that as part of the project. The other big component that Joe kind of mentioned was we went out end of last year and we inspected all the existing culverts that go underneath this roadway. We videoed them all, we reviewed them. Most of them are in poor shape. The bottoms of them are rusting out. It's the nature of they're metal pipes. Unfortunately, that's what was in vogue when they put them in back 50 years ago. And fortunately, they're at a point where we can still line them and maintain the existing pipes at a lower cost than replacing them and have less disturbance to the traveling public. So the plan right now is most of the pipes are going to be lined along the corridor to lengthen their lifespan. There are 1 or 2 that may need to be replaced completely, just that they're too far gone, but that is one of the big components. So now I'm going to start at Western Ave and work my way north, kind of talking through some of the improvements. The first one that we're going to talk about is the new our sidewalks, starting at Pine Knob. If you're familiar, there's the post office right there on the east side of the roadway that end. We're going to extend those sidewalks It's gonna be a 5-foot wide concrete sidewalk from Pine Knob all the way up to Corporate Circle, where they're gonna tie in, there's a sidewalk that goes down Corporate Circle right now, right where they built that new Stewart's. Also, at the Corporate Circle intersection, we're gonna replace the existing traffic signal. That signal is pretty old and is in need to be replaced as part of the project. And as part of that, they'll put in, it'll be brought up to standard. There'll be new detection, which will make that signal operate better than it does today. I'm going to skip over the roundabout because there's a lot to talk about there, and we'll come back. The next one is at Old State Road. For any of you who commute in the PM peak particularly, you are very aware of how much this backs up in the PM peak. And a lot of times the left turning cars will get stuck in the through lane, and that'll back traffic up even worse into the Washington extension. So there's a lot of existing pavement out there. Currently, we may have to do a small box winding in some areas, but we're going to increase that left turn lane storage area by an additional 300 feet, roughly about 15 cars. If you're want to see, I think the existing one maybe holds 15 cars, so almost doubling it. And that'll really help keep the through traffic going, getting through that intersection. Jumping over to Albany Street. We're going to, this signal is antiquated at this point. They are having trouble getting parts for it. So this signal is also going to be replaced as part of the project. And we're going to add some pedestrian accommodations here. The current intersection has no pedestrian accommodations. I have seen personally quite a few people trying to cross here. It's dangerous. It's about a 120-foot crossing, just going across New Karner Road as it sits today. And part of that improvement we're going to put in is a refuge island to really try to make those crossings shorter, so it's a little bit safer. You only have to walk 50 to 60 feet instead of the 120 feet that there is today. The next part, which you may have saw a little sneak peek, was we're going to extend the sidewalks from Central Ave down to Albany Street on the east side. This will also be a 5-foot wide concrete. It's going to go right in the grassed area in front of all. There's a lot of existing businesses in that area. There's a pretty high volume. We do see quite a few pedestrians walking through there in that area also. So up at Central Ave, we're going to widen, do a couple of box widenings where we're going to widen the road out to make it a more consistent section. Currently, if you go through, you probably note that on where the mobile station is right here, and on this FQ, Sunmark, Great Union, the shoulder is almost non-existent in those areas. We're going to make those a little bit wider, get the 5-foot shoulder, so we have a nice consistent section through there for the future bikers that use this corridor. And one of the two of those right-of-way acquisitions, strip acquisitions that Joe was talking about are down here on this corner. And a lot of that's due because we're widening it out. We have to redo the radii and also the curb ramps as part of that work. So we need a little bit more property in that area. The intersection will still maintain the same curb radii that are out there today. There are a lot of the interstate trailers to get around. There's quite a lot of truck traffic in this area. So jumping back down to the Washington Ave, Madison Ave, and New Karner Road intersection, the real reason we were looking at this project has to do with this situation right here. So currently, if you're going southbound toward Gilboa on New Karner Road, and you're in that center lane, we have what they call a split phase signal. So what that means is, at one point, typically the left turners get a green arrow, and the through cars have a red. And drivers in the center lane could be going straight or taking a left. And sometimes I've I live in this area, I know it happens to me quite a bit, is you'll have a car who's going straight, suddenly stop on you, and you think you're going left with everyone else. And there's this is a big accident issue. We have a lot of rear endings here. And then you have the opposite problem. People who are going left get stuck, and then someone's trying to go straight, gets stuck behind that person. And you have people trying to go around. There's just a lot of accidents associated with this. And because of that, Federal Highways does not allow this anymore. And it's part of our project, because we're doing an improvement project, we need to look at this and not have this situation anymore. So that's kind of what was the genesis for looking at the roundabout, was this situation right here where we have this through left split phase. So looking at a few different options with our partners at New York State DOT, we came with the preferred option of a roundabout, just because of, as Joe mentioned, there's a lot of operational issues also here for those who commute through here regularly, especially PM being worse than the AM. That movement, just to get everyone oriented, we got Washington Extension here, through Karner Road is going left to right, you get Madison Ave coming from the top. Coming up Washington Extension, that right turn, going northbound on New Karner Road, backed up all the time. Left turners coming southbound, going on Washington Extension, get backed up. Through movement, going northbound, gets backed up. So we looked at it, and this is really a great location to consider a roundabout. So this will be a 2-lane roundabout designed for the semi-trailer as tractor trailers. If any of you have been out there, you'll probably notice a lot of wide loads go through this area. They come up Route 20, go up 155, and then down Washington Extension. This slip ramp that they utilize today is going to remain pretty much as it is today for them to utilize that area. That location is staying the same. The one new addition as part of this is going to be a new slip ramp for the right turners to keep them kind of moving and merging in, so to keep that traffic. Also, we're going to be putting in 10-foot wide sidewalks or multi-use paths. We'll look at them for pedestrians and bikers to get through, navigate this intersection. Today, there are no accommodations out there for any pedestrians. I know there are apartments up on the end of Madison Ave Extension, with people who walk, trying to maybe get to the Pine Bush over here, maybe they're walking to work, they may walk to Washington Extension, they take their life in hand trying to get across that road right now. The other aspect is we are going to build a retaining wall. This road is climbing to get over to the thruway. We do need to put a small retaining wall in this area to not impact the Pine Bush at all. And that will be done within the footprint of the existing roadway. So with the new roundabout, we're looking at improved level of service, and it'll be about a delay. It'll be about 20 seconds less of delay at this intersection. And that's it.
Yeah, I just want to point out, I mentioned earlier Brian's email, that we leave this up. I said we go back to the first slide. We actually have it on this slide. So Brian's email is there, again, comments based on what you heard on our presentation.